What if the most important 1,000 years of human history happened before the clock even struck zero? Before the internet, before electricity, even before the concept of a single nation existed, a handful of minds stretching from Athens to Beijing solved the hardest problems of civilization: how to rule, how to think, and what to believe. This is the story of the classical era, the age where the modern world was forged not with steel but with revolutionary ideas. The curtain rises around 800 BCE as the world slowly emerges from the shadows of ancient Bronze Age. The earliest stirrings were felt on a rugged, sun-drenched peninsula in southeastern Europe, Greece. The ancient Greeks did not form a single nation but a collection of fiercely independent city-states or polis. The genius of the Greeks lay in this fragmentation. Unable to rely on one centralized king, they developed a system of collective decision-making, setting the stage for one of humanity's most revolutionary political inventions: democracy. We begin in Athens, the heart of the so-called Greek miracle. Here, in the shadow of the Acropolis, the nature of governance was hotly debated. Citizens, though limited to landowning men, gathered in the agora not to hear orders but to debate laws. This was a direct democracy, a fragile experiment built on speech, persuasion, and the power of the vote. But the greatest Greek creation was not political, it was intellectual. This was the moment of the transition from myth to logos, from explaining the world through the will of the gods to explaining it through reason, observation, and logic. First came the pre-Socratics, grappling with the physical nature of reality. Then the Titans. Socrates, the eccentric street philosopher, taught nothing, wrote nothing, yet changed everything. His method of relentless questioning, the Socratic method, forced individuals to examine their own beliefs, introducing critical self-reflection as the highest form of virtue. His student Plato transformed that method into a philosophical system, pondering the nature of perfect forms, justice, and the ideal state in his immortal republic. Following him was Aristotle, the methodical genius who cataloged and organized nearly every branch of human knowledge, from biology and physics to ethics and political theory. Aristotle became the intellectual foundation for Western and Islamic thought for the next 2 millennia. While Athens perfected the mind, its great rival, Sparta, perfected the body and the art of warfare. The inevitable clash between these two systems, the intellectual versus the martial, culminated in the Peloponnesian War, which left Greece exhausted but not destroyed. From the ashes of Greek political unity rose the towering singular figure of Alexander III of Macedon, known to history as Alexander the Great. A student of Aristotle, Alexander launched an astonishing military campaign, shattering the mighty Persian Achaemenid Empire and sweeping his armies across Asia Minor, Egypt, and deep into India. Though his empire fractured upon his early death, his true legacy was not territorial but cultural: the age of Hellenism. Alexander scattered Greek language, architecture, and learning across the known world, creating a cosmopolitan international culture that would link the Mediterranean with Central Asia for centuries to come. As the Greek world began its slow, Hellenistic merger, a young republic on the Italian peninsula was rising to fill the void. Rome began as a modest city-state, founded, as legend tells us, by twin brothers in 753 BCE. But its true genius was its pragmatism, its iron will, and its unparalleled ability to absorb and administer disparate peoples. The early Roman Republic was a sophisticated balancing act between popular assemblies, magistrates, and the powerful Senate. Built on military prowess and an almost religious devotion to the rule of law, Rome slowly conquered its neighbors, then defeated its great rival Carthage in the brutal Punic Wars. By 146 BCE, Rome was the undisputed master of the Mediterranean, which they proudly dubbed Mare Nostrum, our sea. But vast power brought vast corruption. The republic, designed for a city-state, buckled under the weight of an empire. This era of upheaval was dominated by larger-than-life figures, none more pivotal than Gaius Julius Caesar. A brilliant general, politician, and orator, Caesar's ambition shattered the old system. By marching his legions across the Rubicon, he initiated civil war and effectively ended the republic. His adopted son, Octavian, who became the Emperor Augustus, masterfully transitioned Rome into an empire. He maintained the veneer of the republic while accumulating all real power, ushering in the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. For 2 centuries, the Mediterranean world enjoyed stability, order, and prosperity. The enduring legacy of the Roman Empire is not its conquests, but its organization. They were masters of engineering, binding their immense territory with thousands of miles of paved roads connecting Britain to Mesopotamia. They built aqueducts that supplied vast cities and forums that served as centers of commerce and law. Above all, they codified the rule of law. Roman law, with its principles of equity, property rights, and justice, remains the direct foundation for the legal systems of much of Europe and the Americas today. Latin became the language of law, science, and the church for a millennium. While Greece and Rome dominated the Western narrative, the classical era was equally defined by powerful and philosophically rich empires in the East, which were linked to the Mediterranean through the vast exchange network known as the Silk Road. In Persia, the Achaemenid Empire, though briefly humbled by Alexander, returned under various dynasties. The Achaemenids and later the Sassanids created a vast, well-administered empire based on religious tolerance and a centralized bureaucratic system. Persia served as the critical bridge, culturally and geographically, between the Mediterranean and South Asia. In India, the classical era saw the rise of the Mauryan Empire, which unified much of the subcontinent. Its most famous ruler, Emperor Ashoka, underwent a profound conversion to Buddhism after witnessing the brutal carnage of war. Ashoka transformed Buddhism from a regional philosophy into a global missionary religion, sponsoring monks and inscribing ethical edicts on stone pillars across his realm. Later, the Gupta Empire ushered in the Golden Age of India, a period renowned for advancements in mathematics, introducing the concept of zero and the decimal system, astronomy, and classical Sanskrit literature. In East Asia, the long-standing turmoil of the Warring States period finally concluded with the iron fist of the Qin dynasty, led by Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. He unified the script, standardized weights and measures, and began the construction of the Great Wall. His centralized, legalistic rule was harsh but necessary to forge China into a single, cohesive state. The Qin gave way to the Han Dynasty, which reigned for over 400 years and is considered one of the most successful dynasties in Chinese history. The Han perfected the centralized bureaucracy, selecting officials not based on birthright, but on meritocracy through rigorous Confucian examination systems. This bureaucratic model provided extraordinary stability and administrative efficiency, ensuring that despite dynastic changes, the core idea of a unified China persisted. The Chinese model of governance, rooted in ethical conduct and centralized authority, became as foundational to East Asia as Roman law was to the West. Beneath the grand narratives of political empires, a quieter, more profound revolution was occurring in the human spirit: the emergence of the major world religions and philosophies. Historians often refer to the preceding centuries as the Axial Age, c. 800 to 200 BCE, when sages and prophets from Greece to China simultaneously developed universal ethical and spiritual systems. In India, Buddhism, with its message of detachment and ethical living, was codified and began its outward journey. In the Middle East, Judaism provided the foundational monotheistic belief that would give rise to two other global faiths. Within the Roman Empire, in the furthest eastern province of Judea, Christianity began as a small sect. Founded on the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth, it offered a message of salvation, universal love, and spiritual equality that contrasted sharply with the hierarchical social structure of Rome. Despite severe persecution, the faith spread along Roman roads and through Roman cities, captivating the poor, the slaves, and eventually the urban elite. The spiritual transformation reached its climax in the 4th century CE when the Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity, and later emperors made it the state religion. This fusion of Roman power and Christian universalism was pivotal. The Roman Empire's organizational structure, its bishops, its dioceses, its sense of centralized authority, became the framework for the institutional church. When the Roman state eventually crumbled in the West, the Church became the keeper of Roman legacy, preserving the texts, the language, and the concept of a unified European identity. The classical era did not end with a bang, but with a slow, grinding decline manifesting differently in the East and West. In China, the mighty Han Dynasty collapsed due to internal corruption, economic inequality, and external military pressures. However, the deep-rooted bureaucratic and cultural identity established by the Qin and Han meant that fragmentation was eventually followed by reunification under subsequent dynasties. The Chinese idea, the concept of a unified Middle Kingdom, proved more resilient than any one ruler. The fate of the Western Roman Empire was more dramatic. By the 5th century CE, the empire suffered from overexpansion, severe economic crisis, political instability, the barracks emperors, and mounting pressure from migratory tribes, often called barbarians, pushed westward by larger movements in Asia. In 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor Romulus Augustulus was deposed. This date is often cited as the symbolic end of the ancient world. The Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, survived and thrived, transforming into the magnificent Byzantine Empire which preserved Roman law and Greek learning for another 1,000 years. But even in the chaotic West, the Roman and Greek ideas did not die. The Latin language evolved into the Romance languages. Roman law continued to influence local governance. The philosophy of Aristotle was rediscovered, first by Islamic scholars during the Islamic Golden Age and later reintroduced to Europe, where it formed the basis for scholasticism and the foundations of Renaissance thinking. Classical era, therefore, did not merely precede the modern world, it created it. We are the direct inheritors of the Greeks' commitment to reason and democracy, the Romans' dedication to law and citizenship, and the Eastern Empire's administrative ingenuity and moral systems. The people of the classical era taught us how to argue, how to govern, how to organize, and how to believe. Their voices, embedded in their texts and ruins, still echo, the timeless foundation of our civilization. From the democratic ideal of the Greek polis to the lasting moral framework of the axial age faiths, these ideas are not dusty relics. They are the operating system running your world today. If you found a piece of your world in this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest epics. Join us next time as we dive deeper into the Byzantine legacy, or tell us in the comments, which ancient idea do you think still holds the most power?